So the topic that we have for this panel is, as you can see, well, I guess it's not up there, but the sort of managing and adapting to turbulent times of change. And I just wanted to sort of start it off broadly. Howard, I know that you've had a long career in federal government. You were in EPA before BLM. So just from a sort of bird's eye perspective, what are some of the experiences you've had over the years? I mean, EPA's always sort of been a turbulent place, sort of caught up in political fodder. So what are some of the best practices you've seen at sort of dealing with that, and what have you brought over to your role at Interior?
Well, one of the things I learned today is not to follow Nancy, because she stole a lot of the things I wanted to say today, but I'm just so, I don't, let's see, I think that one of the things that's come through in the presentations and the discussions thus far, at least for me, is the importance of leadership. And leadership, to me, you could talk all day about leadership versus management. Is leadership, are you born with it, or can you train to be a great leader? And I think that what we always need, and particularly in turbulent times, particularly when there's a lot of uncertainty, as there is now, are people who are passionate about leading. And I think we also need policies in place that encourage that recognize that. And I think as senior leaders, we need to be instilling in organizations that culture. So one of the challenges I think we face is that I could tell you at EPA and also at BLM, at times we reach a point with individuals who are very good performers, and we desperately don't want to lose them, and because they're very good technically. I mean, Nancy alluded to this with one of her people. And our only path to keeping them is to promote them, right? And the only path to promote them is into management and leadership. Whether or not we think they're good leaders, whether or not sometimes they even want to be managers. And so you see the effects of that in FEV scores across the government. You see people, what I tell my leadership teams that I've had, and I've led a criminal investigative organization at EPA, I've been in the Office of Inspector General, I was a deputy regional administrator for EPA, and I don't have any technical really training. I mean, my degree's in psychology, which I guess comes in handy at times, but is if you don't like conflict, get out of leadership, all right? In all seriousness, not that you have to relish it or like it, but if you really don't like it, if you're conflict averse, you can't be a good leader, I think anywhere, and I know in the federal government. So I guess what I would say is that I've stepped into a lot of organizations that have been in times of transition or have faced are in a bit of disarray. I don't know whether I'm masochistic or what, but that seems to be what I've done in the past several senior executive positions I've been in. And we need to be cognizant of people's different desires for what kind of floats their boat, what motivates them. We need to be cognizant of the differences between baby boomers and millennials and Gen Z. But I personally believe, and perhaps I'm too Pollyanna-ish in this, that being inspired is something everybody wants. Being inspired is why a lot of people come to the federal government, because it's not always frequently for the paycheck. It's because they want to connect to the missions, because they feel like they're in public service. And so I think we as leaders need to take inspiring people seriously. And we need to know our roles as managers. We need to know the arcane, sometimes, rules of supervising in the federal government. But we need to brush aside these myths that we can't deal with poor performers, that we can't recognize great performers, and that there aren't paths to appealing to the human spirit in the people that we work with to make the organizations better. And that is regardless of the agency and regardless of the time and how the pendulum has swung from one administration to the next.
Right. So, Renaye, maybe you can bring us down to a little bit more of the specifics, because your agency, VBA, has seen a lot of change over the last few years. And I'd love to hear, maybe you can just sort of walk us through, from a broad perspective, what those changes have meant and what they look like, and how you're helping to lead through that and get the workforce engaged in what the new sort of directives are.
Well, yes, I think anybody in government or industry would be hard-pressed to find an organization that has changed more in the past 6 or 7 years than VBA. Back in the day, when I was a claims examiner, working for VBA and rating disability cases, we were working with a lot of paper. We had kind of like this very slow-moving machine. We were looking through tons and tons of evidence. A lot of it was duplicate evidence. And so what we've done over the last few years is that we have 56 regional offices, and we have basically extracted all the paper from our regional offices. So we've gone to a completely electronic claims processing model, and we had a lot of talking with people to get them through that, and we have just undergone a lot of legislative change in VA, and that has made us have to do things in a different way. So most recently we had the Appeals Modernization Act of 2017, and that has completely changed the way that we do our appellate work. We have people who were working cases, and they were taking cases that had been in appeal status from between 1 and 4 years, and trying to slog through that evidence, and now we're not doing that anymore. The Appeals Modernization Act, which was implemented in February of this year, makes 3 simplified lanes for appeals. So either you have more evidence and you go into a supplemental lane, you don't have new evidence, you want your appeal decided on the evidence of record, or you want your appeal to go straight to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. And so that's been a big change. So that legislative change, it affected all of our business lines. So our voc rehab and employment, our guaranteed home loans, our compensation, our pension, all of those things require a different way of doing things. And so the overarching thing that I think that we do in VBA when we have a lot of change, because there has been so much going really electronically with almost anything and just not having any paper anymore, is that we focused on people, process, and technology. And for the people part, when we first started undergoing these very, very massive changes, what we did was we created a new position and put a change management agent at every single regional office. So those change management agents were really liaisons between the regional offices and headquarters and the employees. We did a lot of technology. So we had basically a social media VA Pulse page that people can go on and find best practices and find other things on there, ask their peers, and also ask their leadership questions, and all of that is on there as well. The other thing that we did was we updated our manuals. We updated our manuals and made them all electronic, so they're updated in real time, which really improved our quality. So over the last few years, we have increased our employee output by about 25%. We have gone from processing disability claims in about 270 days to now about 113 days. So those changes have really, really helped our customers, our veterans. But to keep our employees engaged, we use the change management network, and we also used a lot of electronic platforms. About 50% of our workforce is eligible to telework, and so we have to figure out ways to engage them, and so it's completely transparent. It's like having them in the office. So we use things like Skype, we use Adobe Connect for training, and make sure that those people are as engaged working at home in their fuzzy slippers as the people are in the office. So that's kind of what we're doing.
So, Howard, are you applying any similar tactics at BLM? I know Secretary Zinke came in with a sort of change-oriented message, be it from the actual mission to just sort of the Unified Regions initiative that he's pushing, or used to push. So how are employees, how are you seeing them react to that, and how are you helping to guide them through it?
So I think one of the challenges that we deal with, at least that I believe from speaking to other federal government employees that we deal with frequently, is that there are things that get a lot of press and that are portrayed a certain way in the press, and then when they actually filter down into the organization, it's much less clear what they mean. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're struggling with certainly at BLM and at my center. I think the department is struggling with it a bit overall, because so there was this talk about reorganization for the department ever since Secretary Zinke started, pretty much. And while there has been a formalization and congressional approval of these unified regions, mm-hmm. the new boundaries, what that actually means and what the next steps are, particularly since we've had a transition in secretaries, is less clear. So there's a lot of talk about moving BLM headquarters, right. the Washington office, west. It's west as far as a dot on the map hasn't been identified yet, nor how many people, nor who will remain.
And Denver is one of the options, right?
So I hear.
Right.
Yes, so I hear. So that's a possibility. But then there's there was talk initially, so my organization does support services, basically, human resource, IT, financial, contracting, and stuff like that, as well as certain what we call scarce skills, mapping and GIS and things like that for the Bureau nationally. And so there was a lot of talk about shared services and how we would move into a regional, these new unified regions for shared services. Well, that sent some uncertainty through my organization, because we're doing a lot of shared services already for the Bureau. So what does that mean if we go to unified regions? Does that mean we dismantle some of what we do now and provide it for the region, the whole department in the region? Do we appeal to, do certain services where we feel we're a provider, of excellence in that particular area? A lot of uncertainty, which still is present. And what the way I'm trying to navigate through that is by mainly two things: being honest with people, right? If they ask me a question, I will give them my honest answer, including either what I know, if I can say it, that I don't know, which is frequently the answer I give, too often for my comfort level, or if I know something and I can't tell them at that point because it's just not information that's releasable. And also by saying, we got to focus on our job. We have a job right now. Mm-hmm. It's serving the Bureau. It's serving mm-hmm. the mission of the Bureau. And the best thing we can do for ourselves is to continue doing that job to the best of our ability. Because when changes start to come around, if we are known as doing something well, then we have a much stronger foundation underneath us. And just one other thing, in terms of that honesty, that's also something that I think is key to helping lead organizations. You know, when we came back from furlough, I had an all-hands meeting, and we have about 500 or so, a little more people across the country, and so there were a lot of people on video and audio, and then people in the room, and someone asked me about the comments that were made by various individuals, including certain administration officials, about federal employees and taking, they have a vacation and such.
Right.
You know, I gave them my honest answer, which probably, it wasn't a political answer in terms of criticizing any particular party, but it was honest to say, you know, that what I really thought of those comments. And I got a lot of feedback that said, we're not used to hearing that from people higher up. So I think it's important to really, you know, kind of open yourself up a little bit to your people, because that's what helps give them a lifeline, I think, during these kind of times.
Right, and I've certainly noticed in my reporting that those sort of comments, be it from lawmakers or high up administration officials, that people hear that they matter. So how do you? I know, Renaye, you talked about the change management network that you've created. How do you? Have you encountered any resistance from people? I mean, I know everyone supports the mission of delivering services to veterans, but just sometimes people get defensive of the status quo, or they say, well, I'm already doing it this way, why do I have to do it that way? Have you encountered any resistance to that, and if so, how have you navigated through it?
We have encountered some resistance to it, and what we do is we try to keep people laser focused on the mission. We have improved in the agency. Our new Undersecretary, Dr. Paul Lawrence, has improved the transparency in our agency to a point that it's never been as transparent as it is now. And I think we are in a much better position to keep employees informed about the why of what we're doing. And if they understand the why of it, then we can get the buy-in. So for the first time, we have a cascading communications plan, and leaders in the field, in our 56 regional offices, can actually now dial into a weekly meeting with the principal deputy undersecretary, where everything, all the business lines are there and everything is discussed. We get meeting notes from the undersecretary's weekly meeting. So there's more transparency than there ever has before, and that, I think, makes it a lot easier to lead people through change. And the other thing is, for VBA, another big change that we've had is that we've had a massive change in our workforce. We were hiring a lot of people just out of college, but over the last few years, we have worked with DoD and developed a program called the WARTAC program, which is the Warrior Advanced Training Course. And so we take people who are getting off of active duty while they're still in the military, while they're still on active duty. They go through several weeks of training to become claims examiners, claims processors in VA, so when they get out, they have a job. So we're really, that has really changed our workforce. Now we have an older workforce. We have a workforce that we need to accommodate more for their disabilities. So, but we also have a workforce who is already so attached to the mission by the time they come to us. It's been a good thing. We're about 55% veteran employees now, and we still need a mix of employees. We don't want to be all veteran employees. We still want to bring people in under other hiring authorities for that diversity of thought. But because the workforce has changed, our messaging has changed.
Howard, do you have any thoughts on that, or sort of how? I was thinking about what you were saying, and I know the all hands kind of meetings, those are important, but you can't be in all places at all times. So how important is it for you to delegate, or how do you spread the message that you're trying to get out there to the whole workforce when you're going through this period where people might have a lot of questions?
So I think that, yeah, I mean, having a team and a leadership team, a senior leadership team as well as a broad leadership and management team in place where we, right? I mean, I have ideas, but I'm one person.
Right.
And to the degree that you can bring people together, particularly people who are in formal leadership positions, because I think every employee should feel like they can be a leader and are a leader, and talk about where we want to take the organization, where we believe we need to focus, what the issues are out in the organization that we see, and that we're hearing from employees. I think that's the key to get some kind of alignment. It's not alignment with me or my vision. It's alignment with what we as a team believe is best for the organization, and that includes. So we have something at the NOC called the Team Leadership Council, which is a group of employees who actually apply to be on it, and then the employees who are on it, review applications, and they meet with myself and my deputy director weekly. And they bring ideas to the table, right? And they did a survey last year, I think, and then took the survey results and worked with us to implement changes. So those kind of things because you're absolutely right, Eric, no one person can be everywhere, nor should we be, right? I mean, one of the lessons I learned from a leader I used to work for is probably one of the best things you can do is make it so that when you leave, you're not missed. Because there are people coming in behind you who are, able to do things maybe in their own way, but you don't. It's not like you've kind of hoarded it all to yourself, right? And when you're gone, everybody's like, "Oh my God, what do we do now?" That's not the legacy that I want to leave. So I think that instilling that in the culture through everybody and not making it about any one person is the way to keep the organization moving forward.
Renaye, do you have thoughts on sort of building off that? How do you get everybody to really be on the same page? You're going through changes, and you may have ideas of what that should look like, but how do you sort of disseminate that?
Well, we do a lot of team building. We do a lot of town halls, huddles, team meetings. And really just have a message that everybody can rally around. I mean, I have to tell you, with VA, I mean, a lot of the work is, a lot of the getting people on board is relatively easy because we have such a noble mission.
Right.
It's very, everybody wants to do the right thing for veterans, and
Right.
and I think that. Again, if you have these communication strategies where, I have my own page where people can ask me questions directly. We disseminate information. We make sure that our employees have an avenue if they're feeling change fatigue. So we have a wellness committee. We have we have our change management management agents that's actually in our office, that's always on a transformation chat that people can just type in a question or say, is anybody else having this problem or something like that. So it's been, I think that we just have a lot of technology in place, and we have a lot of cascading communication so that the message is clear all the way from the Undersecretary's office to the employees. So that has worked well for us.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point too about VA. I mean, what I think every agency does is incredibly important, but VA, it's a little less esoteric. It's like we're trying to help veterans, and everyone
Right.
sort of wants to rally behind that, and probably why your budget keeps going up every year.
Right, we have a nice budget, I will say that.
So something I want to hear from both of you about is there's a big focus on improving. I think this is part of the President's management agenda, improving morale and engagement in the workforce. And I would like to hear from you on how you go about that. Whether it's specific to the uncertainty that you face, or just generally, how is that effort something where you focus specifically on, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z for morale, or is it more of a holistic thing of everything that we're looking at? Each part of that can benefit morale because we're engaging with employees on this. We're looking at work-life balance on this. We're focusing on mission on this. We're giving training. Is it all of that together, or do you specifically focus on how do we make employees happy?
I would say it's all of it. It's both. It's all of it together, and then focus on how we can make employees happy. We have a lot of people who are teleworking and who have that great work-life balance. It's been, that has worked out well for our agency. But we also do very specific things. I have 400 employees. And for every new employee that comes into the office, I personally swear them in so that they are in my office the very first day, and they know that they have access to that office throughout their entire employment with VA. We implemented a lot of strategies to improve morale, and I think in 2017, on the Best Places to Work survey, VA was close to the bottom. For large agencies, we were 17 out of 18. And then last year, we had moved up to 6. Oh. So we were in 6th place. And so I think our strategies are working. I know that personally, in my regional office, I just try to connect people to the mission. Mm-hmm. The first year that everybody is there, either in the spring or in the fall, they go on a field trip or tour or whatever you want to call it, Fort Logan National Cemetery. And so we just really try to connect folks to the mission and keep them connected. And as I said, we have a wellness committee. We do a lot of team building activities. We're having a luau next week, and so it's again, the connection really comes from the mission, but there are things that you can do individually in your specific workplace to kind of make people feel like it's a great place to work.
Yeah, I really believe in that so much. I've had jobs where I was, non-federal government, but I was a very entry-level person, and I had tasks to do every day, but I had absolutely no idea how it connected to the larger picture of what the organization was trying to do. And after a couple months, I was just like, what am I, I don't even know what this place does. So it's just like, I think it can disillusion people a little bit. Howard, do you?
Well, I'm certainly not going to argue with someone who went from 17 to 6. No, I actually do agree with everything Renaye said. I think I would just add that there are some things that I think, almost universally we agree contribute to morale. I think we also have to be careful, though, of being reactionary. So when we get a survey result, for instance, the FEV survey or any other survey, I remember back when I was with EPA with the Office of Research and Development, we did an organizational climate survey, and one of the themes that came back as problematic was trust, which shocked no one. But my first question was, what does that mean? What does that even mean? If you talk to 10 people and you ask them, okay, why is trust a problem? They'll probably give you at least 9 different answers. And so we ended up, implementing conducting focus groups to try to get a better handle on, to make sure that we weren't designing a solution that wasn't going to target the problem. So I think we just need to be careful about that, and then make sure we're listening to people, that we have feedback channels that get to, people at every level of the organization. And some of the things we have, BLM has this program called Pathways, which is not the Pathways that was being spoken of earlier, but it's a week-long program down in the BLM National Training Center in Phoenix. I just came back because we encourage the senior leaders to go. And one of the kind of, you could call it little things they do, is they run a video, which I brought back last year to my organization, that shows these BLM lands across the country, to music and such. And it's really inspirational. I mean, it takes people who might feel disconnected from that mission, who might sit there at their desk and go, wait a minute, what am I doing and how does it connect? To say, okay, somehow, no matter what you're doing, you're contributing to that. You're contributing to, you know, the mission of the Bureau. And the same thing at EPA, one of the things that was really valuable is, particularly people in support, quote, support roles, is to get them out to facilities that where, you know, scientific work and such is being done. We had a drinking water lab in Cincinnati, and if you go in there, there's like full-scale mock-ups of sewer lines and such, and they're testing, you know, how pollutants can go in. Everybody comes back with a renewed understanding of, you know, why we do what we do, no matter what it is that we do.
Mm-hmm. So we have a few minutes left. I want to leave some time for questions. If anybody has any, then we can get to that. Right here.
So as leaders of your organizations, directors and whatnot, how do you how does somebody approach you, because sometimes that can be intimidating, to tell you, hey, look, I think maybe your visions are, because sometimes we get a little stagnant in our visions when we've been working for the federal government for 20 to 30 years. And so we're set in our ways. And the VA has changed a lot. So that was probably top down. But how do you propose you do that bottom up? I mean, how can you let people know they can come talk to you for change?
There are plenty of ways that we allow. We have a platform where people can submit their ideas, and that's at the employee level. But I have to say that you know, employees approach me all the time with ideas, and it's because I'm visible. It's because I'm visible, because every single day I'm out checking on employees in at least one of my divisions saying, hey, what you working on? How's it going? Are you having any problems with that? You know, this is a new thing. How's it, you know, so I'm out there every day so people can approach me all the time. Again, I have my own webpage and with a director's corner where people can submit a question to me. They can walk up to my office at any time. I have employees in my office almost every day. I just make sure from that first day when I talk to people, when they come into my office so I can swear them in, that they know that office is a place where they can share their ideas and also share concerns and problems and things like that. The other thing too is that you know, they have more access now to the undersecretary through the undersecretary's recorded kind of chats that he does. So, you know, they're hearing information directly from him, and we always go, right after that information is shared, we always go to employees with a town hall or whatever and say, how is that information feeling? You know, what do you need to keep you connected or to help you understand why we're doing what we're doing?
You have anything to add?
No, I mean, it sounds like that's, I don't know that I have a lot to add from that, except that I've always been amazed that, I always had to stay conscious of the fact of just what you said, that people are intimidated at times, and it's not necessarily even by anything you've done, it's just by the title and the office and such, so just important to keep in mind.
Any other questions? Got a mic coming.
Great, thank you. All right, I have another M word to bring up, micromanagers. So I've had to deal with plenty of them, especially ones that actually made us sign out for breaks and things like that, which was a very toxic work environment, honestly. And I know we can't tackle how to approach micromanagers as a whole right now, but what are some of the first steps that you can help suggest for micromanagers to kind of help them release some of that control?
Well, I think we have to just, in VBA, we send all of our first-line supervisors to soft skills training. So I think that has been very helpful. And I think the old, I think of that type of micromanagement as like a very kind of old school way of doing things. And I think that we've modernized so much. I think that we've modernized the way that our managers communicate with people as well. And so I think that it's a training issue mostly. From my standpoint, if they get that soft skills training and they learn that to have that mutual trust with their employees, then and all of our senior leaders and most of our supervisors, at least in my office, have undergone servant leadership training as well. So I think again, it's a training issue, making sure folks are trained.
I think you also have to, going back to hire managers and leaders for their skills and their abilities to lead and manage. I mean, going back to something that Justin said earlier, I mean, you know, even if you look at the SES was designed to be a core of people who could manage wherever, lead wherever. And yet if you look at SES announcements out there are technical questions and then that would prevent a lot of people from, no matter how much leadership experience you have. So that's a problem. I mean, you know, first line supervisors I think have the toughest job in the government because you have to have some technical skills, right? But you also need to lead people. You're interacting face to face with staff every day. But I still think we need to start there. Make sure we're looking for people who have those kind of skills that can be then boosted through soft skills training and such. And then as you get up in the ranks, you as a senior leader have to instill in your organization that their job is not to do the jobs of their people. Their job is to lead their people, to manage their people, and allow them and empower them and delegate to have that work done, and then hold them accountable.
I think we might have time for one more question, if anybody has one. Well, I'll ask it then. So, Howard, I think I had you in mind for this, but Renaye, if you have thoughts. You've worked at a couple of different agencies. How generalizable are the tactics that you've employed, with, maybe just management in general, or helping get employees through some of these turbulent times? Do you really have to focus on what is specifically happening at your agency, or are there certain lessons that you carried over from one place to the next?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think, as going back to what I said earlier, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. People, I think, want to be inspired. They want to feel connected. Right. They want to be empowered. They want to do their jobs in general. I think what I've found in organizations is that you have 10 to 20% of the people who are just go-getters out there, high performers, are going to run with it, right? You have, hopefully, 5 or so % who, quite frankly, will never come along, right? And then you have a whole bunch of people in the middle who can either be brought to the light or will go toward the dark. And I think your job is to take that 10 to 20% and try to get the big group of people to move toward that light, to move on that mission. But you also have to understand your organization. While some problems are, I think, universal, because we're all human beings and interpersonal dynamics are interpersonal dynamics, and the technical problems, in my opinion, are a lot easier to address than the human problems, than the human issues. I think that, but you also have to understand what's occurring in your organization in order to, again, not try to implement something that's not going to address the issue.
Great. Well, that just about wraps up our. Oh, well, okay. Keep it brief.
Sorry. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate what all you were saying regarding leadership development and the gaps that you see, and the important shift and transformation that's going on with change, whether it's the public or private sector. Saying that, and you've used key word choices such as empowerment. And, 2 other areas that I keep thinking about that keep me up at night are dealing with the ambiguity, empowering people, and also allowing for some risk-taking. And so when we talk about a cultural shift, what role does it play when we look at ambiguity and ability to allow your people, empower your people to take some risk?
And by the way, you have 10 seconds.
Well, I mean, we want every employee to feel like a leader in their own right. I mean, that's my goal for people, is that leadership goes all the way down to the employee level. You know, with VA as just a huge organization, you know, one of the biggest things, we don't really see a whole lot of risk-taking at the employee level. Now, at the middle manager level, we do encourage a little bit more risk-taking, but you know, when you're dealing with veterans' lives and their livelihood and things like that, you have to be very measured in your approach. So we do encourage risk-taking, but risks are highly monitored. Let's just say that.
And just real quick, mistakes are not necessarily bad, right? So it's okay. Making the same mistake over and over, that's not so good.
Well, that's a good message to leave it on. Well, thank you to the panelists for being here. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for listening.